I noticed something strange about Blake a week before I got the text. Actually, I'd been noticing all sorts of strange things for months. Late night phone calls, a sudden obsession with turning his phone face down whenever we were together, work trips, that he was weirdly vague about. But the final clue arrived one morning in the form of a text from an unknown number. A screenshot of his Instagram comments in a chain that looked suggestive. He was flirting openly, but the handle he was flirting with wasn't just any random woman on the internet. It was an account I recognized from his TikTok feed. A woman named Danica who posted thirst traps and comedic sketches, and whom Blake had apparently just discovered. Of course, I had my suspicions, but no concrete evidence. I decided to quietly gather what I needed instead of jumping to confront him head on. The heartbreak itself had already started sinking in the moment he placed his phone face down at dinner the first time. That was his tell. When we first started dating, he used to say, "Hey, read my messages out loud while I'm driving," or "I'm too lazy to type, can you respond for me?" Because we had nothing to hide, but he'd stopped doing that months ago. So I waited, bided my time. I made sure I wasn't going to get blindsided financially. I quietly updated my personal emergency fund, changed a few passwords to streaming services, double-checked all joint statements. I was fully aware that, in the event of a nasty breakup or some sort of meltdown, he could, and probably would, come for whatever he could get. I also had a separate text conversation going with my cousin, who was a lawyer, just in case. Something told me I'd need to be prepared. I still wasn't entirely sure how it would play out, or when. But I expected that if Blake was stepping out with Danica, or anyone else, he'd eventually slip up in grand fashion. Our mutual friend, Patrick, had told me that Blake had gotten weirdly cocky and had even posted a few cryptic jokes on TikTok about upgrading his life. He was small time on TikTok, only a few thousand followers, but they were starting to notice his new storyline about having to make hard decisions for personal growth, a vague way of boasting about leaving me, presumably. The official final blow arrived 2 days before my birthday. Classy, right? A text message at 7 a.m., on a Thursday no less. It was short but brutal. "I can't do this anymore. You're too clingy, too demanding. I need space to find happiness. Don't bother calling." He didn't even mention my birthday. No, "I'm sorry," or "I'm sure this is hard." Just an abrupt end to a relationship of 3 years, typed out in a single dismissive sentence. My immediate reaction? Quiet relief and perhaps even satisfaction. I shook my head, reread the words, and felt my hands tremble, but not with rage or sorrow. Instead, it was the adrenaline rush of realizing I no longer had to tiptoe around his lies. He had confirmed everything I'd already suspected, that he was done, that he was playing dirty, and that he expected me to collapse in tears. He wanted an emotional meltdown, the sort of reaction that would justify the big, heroic break he was claiming. I assumed he'd spin his narrative on TikTok like, "You see? She is obsessed, just like I said." So I simply wrote back, "Understood. Your things are in the hallway. Kindly collect them by Friday morning." That was it. No confrontation, no sobbing phone call. The quietness of that response was the biggest power move I could have made, and I was safe, financially, because while he wasn't paying attention, I had systematically removed him from our joint credit cards and had placed a freeze on any extraneous lines of credit associated with me. I wasn't going to let him ruin my credit or drain my accounts in a vengeful spree. That was step one. Ensure I was protected in every possible way. I also reached out to our landlord. Even though we were both on the lease, I explained that I would be solely responsible for the apartment going forward. Because I had the better credit score and a stable income, I run my own small marketing firm, the landlord was more than happy to reassign the lease. I made it official within hours of that text. It was unbelievably cathartic to sign something that effectively said, "He is out. I stay." Blake, on the other hand, must have thought he was unstoppable. He posted a TikTok the very next day. I only found out because my best friend Allie forwarded it to me with a barrage of exclamation points. In the video, Blake was leaning back in a chair, wearing that smug grin I'd come to despise, and captioned it, "POV, your ex was obsessed, so you had to ditch her." He made a show of rolling his eyes, miming a meltdown. Comments under it ranged from mindless support, "You deserve better, King," to suspicious critics. Are we sure she was the problem, though? But the TikTok took off, especially once the gossip pages in our city's small influencer circles noticed it. Blake's brand was funny, misunderstood good guy, so he cultivated pity and rallying support from people who only knew his side. The TikTok soared to over 100,000 views in less than 2 days. People were mocking me in the comments, calling me a stage 5 clinger and psycho. I wanted to lash out, to post receipts of all his lies and manipulations, but I resisted. I told myself, give it time. Because the thing about false narratives is that they only hold until the truth surfaces. And in my experience, the truth always surfaces sooner or later. In the meantime, I threw myself into my business. I'd been meaning to launch a new branding campaign for local restaurants that needed post-pandemic marketing help. Now, with no one distracting me, I was unstoppable. I poured my creative energy into building out promotions for a friend's small bakery. I helped a local coffee roaster revamp their entire social media presence. All the while, I was refining my personal brand. I posted nothing about the breakup, not one story, not one cryptic post, not one petty subtweet. When people messaged me, worried or curious, I'd just say, "I'm doing great, thanks." Blake interpreted my silence as weakness. He made more TikToks in the following weeks. Some were comedic sketches hinting at crazy ex-girlfriend stories. Others were veiled references to how some people can't take a hint. All of them had that same smirk. I suspected he was dating Danica, though no one had confirmed it, and they hadn't posted anything overtly romantic. But the rumor mill churned, and the drama kept building him an online audience. He soaked in that attention like a thirsty houseplant. What he didn't realize was that while he was bragging and pointing fingers online, I had set some quiet traps of my own. Never underestimate a woman scorned, especially if that woman has a cousin who's a lawyer. Every time he posted a TikTok with my likeness, footage of me from older videos, or references that clearly included me by name, my cousin documented it. Every time he outright lied about me in a manner that was defamatory, we documented that too. I had enough screenshots, video downloads, and public comments to form a nice little portfolio of evidence. Did I want to sue him right away? Not necessarily, but I wanted a nuclear option, just in case. In the midst of all this, I was thriving. My marketing firm was quietly picking up speed. A few of my campaigns started going viral in the local scene for their cleverness. I got recognized by a regional magazine, which highlighted me as an emerging entrepreneur. I didn't wave that in Blake's face, but I knew eventually he'd see it. People in our town talk. And while my star was rising, ironically, so was his. Though his growth came from questionable social media drama rather than anything substantial or positive. Then, out of the blue, Danica DM'd me on Instagram. That was a shock. She wrote, "Hey, I know this is weird, but can we talk?" I almost deleted it. I didn't want drama, but curiosity won. I responded politely, asking what was up. She proceeded to drop the biggest bombshell I'd seen yet. She found something in Blake's apartment that disturbed her. She wouldn't say what it was, but it was proof that he'd been lying. She wanted to compare notes with me. For a moment, I felt a flash of pity for her, for anyone who got stuck with Blake's manipulations, but I was cautious. I said I'd only talk if we met at a neutral location. No intimate conversations in DMS that Blake could spin or screenshot. The next day, we met at a small cafe. Danica was surprisingly quiet, not the vivacious TikTok star I'd imagined. She sat across from me, nervously tapping the table. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me photos of a small, locked box she'd found hidden in Blake's closet. "It was behind some old jackets," she explained. "He gave me a key to his place. I was looking for a sweatshirt, and I found this." Inside the box, she discovered pictures, printed photos of me. Old couples pictures from the very first year Blake and I dated. Even pictures I'd never seen before, apparently taken without my knowledge. The strangest part, the back of each photo had little scrawls of how he felt about me at the time. Some were downright sweet. Others, from more recent times, were laced with resentment or mocking commentary, like, "She's too trusting," or "She'd never believe I'd cheat." Danica also found random trinkets, an old lipstick of mine, receipts from dinners I paid for, a lock of my hair that I have no idea when or how he got. I had goosebumps. Danica looked shaken. She explained that she confronted Blake about it, and he exploded, telling her to mind her own business, that she was overreacting. "But this is creepy, right?" she asked, eyes wide. Yes, it certainly was. Part of me felt physically ill that he would ever keep such mementos in such a secretive way, but a darker part of me was satisfied that the real Blake was finally revealed. This man who was calling me obsessed was apparently hoarding bizarre souvenirs like a twisted personal museum. On top of that, Danica said she found a folder titled Marketing Projects on his desktop, which turned out to be screenshots and photos from my personal digital portfolio. He'd stolen entire pitch decks I had created for clients. He was apparently planning to pass them off as his own to snag freelance gigs. She realized he wasn't just a manipulative ex. He was also a schemer with no moral qualms about stealing or lying. "I'm done with him," she said, "but I also think you deserve to know what's going on. I feel horrible because I believed all the stuff he said about you, that you were controlling and clingy." I thanked her for the information. While I was revolted, I was also weirdly grateful that she came forward. It took courage. She'd seen the real him. And that was one more piece of ammunition that I could use if he escalated. Not that I needed to. Blake's carefully orchestrated image began imploding shortly after Danica left him. She posted a short TikTok of her own, referencing a relationship where the guy had a hidden shrine of his ex. She never named him explicitly, but everyone in that circle knew exactly who she meant. Within hours, the rumor mill exploded, and the more people talked, the more screenshotted evidence came forward. Women started direct messaging Danica about similar experiences with Blake. It was as though the final dam burst, and a flood of truth was unleashed upon him. I watched from the sidelines, sipping tea, literally, and continuing to manage my thriving marketing firm. Meanwhile, Blake's follower count started dropping, and the negative comments overshadowed the supportive ones. People were outraged. They demanded an explanation. Some even demanded apologies on my behalf, which was ironic because just weeks ago, they called me a psycho. A couple of times, I typed up a TikTok response or a statement, then deleted it. The meltdown was happening on its own. I had no need to intervene. He was being canceled, as they say, by the very online crowd that once adored him. One day, out of nowhere, a letter arrived at my apartment. I recognized Blake's handwriting. The letter was a pitiful mix of apology, justification, and fear. He wrote how he was losing followers by the day, how sponsors, he'd managed to snag a couple of low-tier brand deals for his comedic content, were suddenly backing out. People were calling him all sorts of things. Creep, stalker, liar. He lamented, "I know I messed up." Could you maybe put in a good word for me or clarify that I wasn't always a bad guy? He ended it with a half-baked admission. You don't have to, I understand. But I'm sorry. I really am. I read it twice. Then I placed it carefully in a folder with the rest of the receipts. I didn't plan to respond. I'd already told him to collect his things, which he never did. I ended up donating anything valuable to a local charity and throwing out the rest. He wanted me to fix his mess, to salvage his reputation, all because his new fans and brand deals realized who he really was. The arrogance was staggering. He'd spent weeks parading his victory, mocking me publicly, and only when it backfired did he decide to reach out. The apology, if you could even call it that, was too little, too late. The best part of poetic justice is that it often requires no direct action from the one who was wronged. In my case, the universe simply took its course, aided by Danica's revelations and Blake's own toxic personality. My official revenge came in the form of success. Pure, unstoppable success. Word spread about my marketing firm's knack for boosting small businesses. More clients hired me, and soon I had to expand my team. I rented a small office space, painted it a bright shade to keep the vibes positive, and recruited an assistant and a junior marketing associate. When I held the official grand opening for my new office, I had a line of potential clients out the door. And, because fate has a sense of humor, the local news station ran a segment on up-and-coming female entrepreneurs in the city. They invited me for an on-air interview. It was surreal, sitting in that TV studio, being applauded for my savvy and resilience. The interviewer asked about my personal journey, how I managed to build a business from scratch. I just smiled and gave the usual motivational lines about passion, hard work, and perseverance. I didn't mention Blake. He didn't deserve a line in that success story, not as anything but a footnote. When I walked out of the studio that day, I saw him there, in the waiting area, presumably for some other segment. Or maybe he was just there to watch me. His face was drawn, eyes hollow with regret. He gave me this sad half-smile as if to say, let's talk. But I simply nodded politely and kept walking. That night, I got a text from a number I hadn't saved, but recognized. Blake again. He wrote, "Congrats on your segment. Guess you won, huh?" I stared at the words for a minute. Guess you won. As if this were a game with winners and losers. I typed one sentence back. I'm just happy, Blake. That was that. I heard he ended up moving out of state a few weeks later, trying to distance himself from the scandal. Danica blocked him everywhere. People eventually moved on to the next social media train wreck, but Blake's credibility was tarnished. A year down the line, no one relevant in our city's influencer scene would work with him. He lost those small brand deals. The TikToks he had left up about me only served as a monument to his own downfall, and he was stuck with that black mark forever. Meanwhile, life was good. My marketing firm blossomed into a respected local agency. We took on bigger and bigger clients, from fashion boutiques to craft breweries, and eventually landed a contract with a large tech startup. My personal brand soared alongside the business. The best revenge truly was living well, traveling, meeting new people who valued me, forging partnerships that brought out my creativity. I'd never felt freer or more secure. Gone were the days of walking on eggshells, worried about what scheme Blake might be plotting or who he might be talking to behind my back. About a year and a half after the initial breakup, I found myself on a rooftop bar, celebrating the signing of a major client. I clinked glasses with my team as the sun set behind the city skyline. The hush of success, the satisfying swirl of champagne in my glass. It was everything I'd dreamed of. I thought of the box Danica had found in Blake's closet, of those scribbled notes on the backs of pictures of me. She'd never believe I'd cheat. She's too trusting. I remembered the hateful TikToks he'd made, painting me as the obsessed ex. And then I looked around at the swirl of laughter and energy around me, my team, my friends, the life I'd built. There wasn't an ounce of anger left in my heart, just gratitude for my own resilience. In the end, the obsessed ex moniker had flipped spectacularly back on Blake. His downfall was poetic in its inevitability, and I never had to raise a finger. Sure, I had that folder of evidence, but I never needed it. Public opinion did the work for me. He lost the one thing he cherished more than me, his carefully cultivated social clout, and had to watch as I ascended to a new level of success and happiness. He may have scuttled off to some other place to start anew, but the internet never forgets. As for me, I was free. I'd spent too long adjusting myself to fit into his narrative. Now I got to live my own. Sometimes I get asked, if you could do it all over, would you skip the heartbreak? My answer is always no, because that heartbreak was the key that opened the door to my own empowerment. It forced me to stop relying on someone else for validation, to trust in my own strength, and to find the joy of a life lived on my own terms. Sure, it started with betrayal, but it ended in triumph. And that's worth every tear I might have once shed. If Blake has learned anything, I hope it's that no lie can hold forever, and that calling someone obsessed doesn't make it true. Meanwhile, I keep my head up, keep building, keep succeeding. After all, no revenge tastes sweeter than standing at the pinnacle of your own achievements, sipping champagne as the sun sets, while the one who tried to tear you down realizes his worst mistake. He underestimated me. By the time he figured it out, it was far, far too late.